and I'm directing all my anger
Time is 7 p.m. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the meeting to order. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. At this time, we will begin with roll call for the special council meeting of August 31st, 2020.
Eight council members are present, Mayor.
Item 3, motion to waive city council agenda policy resolution 2019-209 for this August 31st, 2020 special city council meeting. Tyler, you want to just touch base on that, please?
Yes, I will. So upon reviewing the agenda resolution 2019-209, we kind of got started off behind the 8 ball. I got it put on out as soon as possible. So it kind of the standard that we set for it being 7 days out before the meeting. So this is going to. So I still posted for a Wednesday, but instead of the meeting being on Tuesday, it's on a Monday instead of a Tuesday. So the time frame is a little bit shorter than it typically would be.
Councilmember Jacobus.
I don't believe anybody's going to take issue with this tonight. I would support us moving forward with this, and in doing so, if there's no other discussion, make the motion.
Councilmember Jensen.
I'll second the motion.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
So because no majority at the last meeting, it's a 3-3 tie, we must suspend the rules of 2-108, number 9, in order to reconsider this item. And this would take a supermajority. And I would take a motion to that effect. Councilmember Jacobus. Councilmember McLean.
I make a motion to suspend the rules, I guess, or to reconsider resolution 2020-174.
Actually, this is a motion to suspend the rules of 2-108-9, which we have to do first before we go to number 4. Is that still your motion?
Yeah, I corrected to say suspend the rules.
Marks.
Oh, sorry.
Everybody kind of back up. Mike keeps us going. All right, then figure it out.
So I make a motion to suspend the rules. There we go. I'm holding down my space. I am.
I can hear you.
You want to go check her?
Actually, shows me either on the line, but I can hear her.
Well, she doesn't understand, I guess, that you have to go on the screen. Pop up in the
Okay,
head.
let's try this again.
She has to unmute.
Make a motion to suspend the rules in order to move forward with reconsideration. Is that correct?
Councilman Langman.
I will second that motion for 2-108-9. I will second that motion.
Cast your votes.
The motion is 5-3. It fails.
So that being said, it takes out the option to reconsider number 4. It takes out option number 5. And we move to Councilmember, your item, Resolution 2020-176, approving amended ballot language for general election question. Actually, it's approving ballot language for general election question to issue negotiable bonds in the principal amount not to exceed $10,317,000 for the purpose of constructing a joint law enforcement center. And at this time, I think we'll turn it over to Councilman Yerger.
Am I unmuted?
Looks like it.
Yes.
Turn on your mic.
Yeah.
Mark, you need to turn your mic off.
And you have my speaker on? Yep. I don't have to hold the space bar down? Okay, ready to go. Council members, I firmly believe that getting the Joint Law Enforcement Center before the public for ratification is a vote that's needed, and I believe it's long overdue. However, the original draft of the ballot language could have and should have been created at least months ago. When the talk of putting this on the ballot was discussed at the time of the primary vote in May. Had this language been drafted back then and pending only an update for final cost, the ballot language could have easily have been discussed, clarified, and amended timely manner rather than now at the last minute. I believe that the originally proposed Resolution 2021-74, the notice election and sample ballot, all lacked some transparency because they failed to adequately describe some important details so the public could effectively render an informed vote. These aforementioned documents wrongly assume that the voters have been given an opportunity to weigh in on the overall project, expectations, its overall cost, and other important details such as phase-in construction and a provision for adding a jail. Even though this project dates back several years and went through previous council actions, the public has never been asked to officially weigh in on these plans until now. For those reasons, I have some documents that I'd like to place in the public record tonight that will allow all parties to refresh themselves on the terms of the interlocal agreement between the city and the county, the request for proposal, that is the RFP that went out requesting construction information, and some Q&A that was recently put out with regarding the building of the Joint Law Enforcement Center. So I would ask that these be received into the record at this point.
Take a motion to receive. Councilman Jensen.
Oh, sorry. I'll make a motion to receive.
Councilman Jacobus. Councilmember Jacobus.
I will second it. There you go, sir.
Cast your votes. Okay.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
Here's one.
You need another one, all right. Okay. So having said all that, Resolution 2021-776, as is before you tonight, contains some amended language for both the resolution, the notice of election, and the sample ballot, in an attempt to rectify at least some of the transparency and disclosure issues that were raised and briefly discussed at the previous city council meeting. The edits being made have been held to the bare minimum. As council considers the amended version of the ballot-related document language tonight, I would ask the council to ask themselves why the originally proposed ballot language didn't succinctly contain and define the following: the project, the overall and city share of cost, the specific where that this was going to be built, specific when and how it will be built, that is, are the shovels going to be in the ground for both parties at the same time, or will it be phased in construction as the RFP requested or required? And would it discuss the potentiality for adding a 50-person jail at some time in the future, as well as how it would be funded and the overall impact of the cities versus the county's taxpayers? As originally crafted, the ballot documents only discuss and ask the voters to approve and verify the basic what for, that is the law enforcement center, and the city's share of cost, the $10.3 million, and the how it would be funded, the bonds. But there wasn't anything else in the resolution, the election notice, or the ballot that would have given the public the other information that I just alluded to with greater specificity. That's rather important if you're going to cast a vote on a project of this magnitude with this importance to the city. I don't think there's any question that this is important to the city. I think it's important to the members of this council. I'm sorry? You're kidding. I've got the space bar down and I'm on my speed button. Oh, I suppose. So where do you want me to start? All over again? So I still have to hold the space bar down. Okay, so starting back over, Resolution 2021-76 now contains amended language for the resolution, the notice of election, and the sample ballot. It's an attempt to rectify at least some of the transparency and disclosure issues that were raised and briefly discussed at the previous council meeting. The edits being made have been held to a bare minimum. As the council considers the amended version of the ballot-related language tonight, I'd ask the council to ask themselves why the originally proposed ballot language didn't succinctly contain or define the following: the project, the overall and the city share of costs, the specific where it would be built, the specific when and how it would be built, that is, any intimation as to the shovels in the ground by both parties at the same time, or phase construction as the RFP request requires, or the addition of a 50-person jail at some time in the future, as well as how it would be funded and the overall impact to the cities versus the county's taxpayers. As originally crafted, the ballot only disclosed and asked the voters to approve the very basic what for, which is the law enforcement center, the city's share of cost to be funded at $10 million, and the how it would be funded bonds. The other questions remained undefined for the voters in the material that was being put before them, not giving them the information that they need to make an informed or the most reasonable and informed decision that they could. So the amended version of the language tonight corrects for some of these deficiencies, but not all. In order to keep it as succinct as possible, there's really only 3 basic edits in the document that is different from the 174 document that was brought forth originally at the last meeting. It defines the total cost. It defines more specific, where is it going to be built? And it specifies at least that this is on joint managed operation. That doesn't go as far as I would personally like with regards to defining phase construction and or the jail. But it didn't seem like they were easily made amendments to incorporate those things. So this particular version of the ballot language embraces the three items that I just articulated. And before council, the packet was the written version that does that, as well as a clean copy for approval tonight.
Councilman Jensen.
Well, language attached to specifically address the law enforcement center on the ballot creates potential legal problems. If there's an archaeological find upon the groundbreaking that prevents building there, excessive ballot language would prevent it moving forward in an alternative location. I have some experience recently in trying to bring an important issue up to a vote of Nebraska citizens. Not exactly the same, but one of the things that I learned is that when it comes to language on an issue for a ballot, you listen to the lawyers, even if you have some personal misgivings. There is one ballot initiative that's likely to come before the voters in Nebraska, and some others that are in question, and the difference being that the language was scrutinized extensively. I would like, when the time is appropriate, I'd like to offer a further amendment on Councilman Yerger's amendment when it's appropriate. I understand we still have further discussion to make.
Councilmember Jacobus.
I have just a little bit to add. Am I on, Brian? Mark, please turn yours off. Am I good? Okay. One of my questions I have, I guess comment, not to counter you, Mr. Councilman Jensen. However, I do not believe the city would have been foolish enough to invest literally $3.6 million into that total property that is Fremont Business Park, had there been any potential for, as Mr. Newton had commented prior in your comment, for an archaeological find or a cemetery site of sorts. So that said, I think more than likely, I mean, if there was going to be an issue of concern, I would hope that after $3.6 million has been invested in that property, that's a done deal. There was a question put forth. A few of us had some commentaries that have been emailed to us. Some of them were shared throughout. Some of them perhaps maybe came in solely to us. One of the questions I was asked was, if the city passes the bond and the county does not, do we still proceed to build here by ourselves, or the reverse? If the county passes and the city doesn't, do we still? What do we do? That's just a question asked. It's not something that has to get beat up tonight. I actually had made a motion at the prior meeting that thought it would be kind of a compromise of sorts, and that was to have the location at least defined. Because there are those that have not paid a lot of attention to some of the goings on as far as the law enforcement center or the Fremont Business Park, affectionately known as the Tech Park. And people that have lived here 20 years have asked me where this is at. And that is the only reason why I brought it up. It wasn't to stalemate or to shut the door on it. And to my chagrin and surprise, it hadn't passed. This could not have been revisited underneath the old resolution because of our chapter 2-108, number 9. And also because if it's not spelled out in our Fremont Municipal Code, as you know, we follow Robert's rules. And the prevailing votes would have to come in. We did not have a majority vote. It was a dead deal that night that we left. And council was correct in advising me not to proceed with trying to bring it up. And that's why we simply couldn't bring it back to pass. And we couldn't regardless. I don't take issue with any of the red line that's on here. And having not gotten the rest of the material, I do want to ask Mr. Yerger a question to give him an opportunity to respond. Where were the question and answers back? I see in here that there are some question and answers on here, and there's a mention of the jail, and that was a point blank question. And on the last pages of the sheet, there's question and answers. and I'd like to find out where that came from. During it says long question and answer. And as far as I know, we're not having any plans with the jail, but the request for proposal that you gave us tonight has in there that was an ask, or that's going to be a bill. So I guess I didn't know where some of these documents came from, because I don't recall seeing these before. And other than that, I take no issue with the red line, and I would support moving forward as it sits.
Councilman Lakeman.
Yeah, I just want to say the reason why I voted no on accepting this is you're giving away a lot of information here that we haven't had a chance to look at. And I think you're the one that always brings up, you hate getting information during the meeting and then expect to know everything that's on it. So that's why I voted no to receive your documents. A lot of the things you're saying, all of that's going to be covered in meetings. The public will have a chance to go and look at it, see all the information, where it's going to be built. And now that we have the schematics, we can show them exactly what it's going to look like, what it's going to be on the inside, and how much exactly it's going to cost. All that information will be given to the public before the vote. They will have their chance to see it. We don't need all these 4 or 5 votes that you want to bring up. One vote is all we need.
Okay, am I good?
Yep.
So I just want to say that, I think it was unfortunate that we had the tie vote. I think all of us felt like this is an important issue. We wanted to move forward. My concern at the last meeting, as I had articulated or tried to articulate, was that even though there was some good logic perhaps in adding language about the location, that had not been vetted by our attorney. Therefore, we could have been endangering or jeopardizing the language of the bond referendum language, as has been already noted by Councilmember Jensen. The language is important, and I thought I had made it clear at the last meeting, maybe I did not, but that in spite of whatever might be nice, we needed to get the language. I thought we needed to get the resolution passed. So, therefore we had the tie vote. I am concerned that the language presented tonight in a resolution by Councilmember Yerger has not probably been reviewed and vetted by our bond counsel. I'd like to ask him that question if it has been vetted and reviewed, because I do have a concern about approving something tonight forward by a council member who I don't believe is an attorney, and making sure that this will hold up under the test of legal scrutiny. So I guess that's all for now.
Any other comments from council before we go to public comment? We'll go to public comment. Any comments from the public?
Council, Mayor, my name's Joey Spellerberg. I live at 2705.
Yeah, sure.
2705. Good thing I don't sound that bad. Maybe I do. My name's Joey Spellerberg. I live at 2705 Summerwood Cove here in Fremont. I'm here today to voice my support in approving the ballot language and getting this to the public to a vote. I followed this project for a while now. Was able to get a tour of the police station. I came to one of the public meetings here at the city, was able to talk to the sheriff and the director of communications. And I know there's been a lot of coordination and a lot of time put into this project, not only in coming together as a community, but in the design work as well to get it to this point that we are right now with a vote to be able to take it to the public. I commend you for coming together tonight and making this a priority. And I just was disheartened at the last meeting with the tie vote, just to think that, you know, I as a citizen want to be able to vote on this. And I think a majority of the public are ready to vote on this as well. So I know your support of law enforcement. I know your support of this project and moving this forward to the public. And so I just urge you tonight to approve this ballot language and make sure that the public has an opportunity to vote on this issue. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hi. Hello, my name is Eric Goodrich. I'm a previous law enforcement officer. I was here in Fremont, Nebraska up till 2003. And I was hoping that the council would move forward with getting this amendment to the vote for the people, just for the fact that back in 2003, when I left the city of Fremont, the building was in disarray then. They were constantly fixing things. And it's just been, obviously, the building wasn't set up for law enforcement. There's a lot of safety issues that are with the building currently. If you've ever looked at the photos, hopefully, I don't know if everybody's gone through it, but it's really something that you have a great bunch of officers and personnel that are working here. And it's just something that I think the new building would be a good recruitment tool, retention tool. And also it's just something I think that needs to be, it's well overdue since even 2003, the building that they have was too small. Obviously they have a lot of problems with the building. And if anybody ever had any questions about some of the experiences we had in that building, it's just too small. I mean, there's no other way to put it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So I just go ahead and talk?
I'll state your name and address. And
Okay.
Go ahead.
Jeff Peterson, 2635 Park Place Circle. And I just want to echo what the previous two speakers said, and I completely agree with that. So I don't mean to be redundant or anything, but I just want to encourage everybody. I know we live in a great town here, and thank the good Lord we don't live in Kenosha, Wisconsin, or Portland, Oregon here. I mean, boy, am I glad. But I think we need to move forward on this. My late father was a city councilman here in the early 70s. I remember one time asking him, why isn't this happening? Why isn't that happening? And he says, well, some of our city leaders seem to think if they wait long enough, the price will go down. And I said, and I was just a high school kid. And I said, it doesn't work that way. And he goes, never has. So if we're sitting here tonight thinking about language and ping-ponging it back and forth, and then someday we wake up 2 years down the road and that $10 million city share is $12 million. I mean, I'm a tightwad. I don't like paying property taxes, but we need to get this done. And so if it's 18 today or 10 million our share, let's get busy. Let's everybody get together. It's a definite need. It's not luxury, it's a need. And that building is old. Experts have said it's old, it's outdated. It would be a good recruitment tool. I mean, it kind of puts Fremont in the 21st century. So I would encourage everybody, thank you for meeting. Have a special meeting tonight. That's wonderful. Let's put our heads together and get her done. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Any comments from Zoom? There's no comments from Zoom. I would close public comment. Any comments from council? Councilman Legban?
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time or if you just. I would like to make a motion on Mr. Yerger's number 6, make a motion to, let's go back to the original draft and vote on that. That is my motion.
Councilmember Jacobus,
Not knowing you're going to say that, but you can't go back to the original draft. The draft is dead. It was part of Resolution 2020-174. So it was a dead deal last Tuesday night. In regards to the information that Mr. Yerger gave, it just supported what had been put in the record, and I am thankful. I appreciate that we were able to discuss this tonight, because had this agenda item not been added by Mr. Yerger, we would not be sitting here discussing this. We'd have had to go home. And it was because your prevailing vote and because of majority vote issues of concern. So that said, I'm not really sure what the hardship would be. I'd like to ask Mr. Yerger to elaborate if legal has weighed in on any portion of this, or if there's been any pushback from legal with regards to this. They've had this language because Mr. Yerger put this in last week. Nothing's changed in the flavor. It simply lends to more transparency. But we cannot go back to the original draft. The original draft is dead.
Mayor,
Travis, go ahead.
there's a few things we need to address. First of all, I believe the motion was to amend the current resolution that's on the table, and there's no issue with doing that. Number two, I believe you had mentioned before that the issue with the majority vote on a reconsideration, that only comes up with the rules under the Fremont Code. Under Robert's rules, a 3-3 vote, there is a prevailing side, and the vote would be able to be reconsidered and come back. And the last issue, I haven't spoken with Mr. Yerger, but I did speak with Mr. Mullen last week, the bond counsel, and he had referenced legally there isn't anything preventing that type of language to be included. But he and I agree, I wouldn't advise adding a language or anything because you're handcuffing yourself to that particular location and everything. If something happens, you got to do this process all over again.
Councilman Yerger.
I have a point of clarification since I had to present this resolution myself as to whether or not that constitutes my opportunity to speak as the presenter versus a council person.
I think the way I would look at it is that since you are a presenter, kind of like an applicant, you can answer questions, and that would allow you to speak more than once. But I think there's a motion on the table. I don't know if we're debating the motion or if
We
there's
haven't
a
had
second.
council comment yet.
Okay, as long as I have an opportunity to speak as a council person, just not as a presenter, I wanted to answer some of the questions that have been posed before I would make further comments as a member of council. So there was a question on the table as to what were the sources of the documents that were put into the record this evening. Those documents came from the November 2022 of those documents. That is the interlocal agreement and the RFP document came from the November 27, 2018 City Council meeting. Those were in the agenda packet. They were discussed and voted on at that particular meeting. Just put them in for reference because it provides guidance with regards to the joint venture with regards to the use of property, the conveyance of property, which was at the time stated to be Tech Park, Outlot A. So it's specifically defined there, and even though in the amended language that we're discussing tonight, no references were made to Tech Park or the Fremont Business Park, but rather just to the 29th and Avenue location, so the citizens of Fremont would know where that is. So those were covered in the, in the first document, that is the interlocal agreement. Then the RFP document was entered into the record from that same time because it specifically spells out the opportunity for there to be phased in development. That is, the city and the county don't need to build at the same time necessarily. design of that building was to be brought forth in a modular fashion so it could be built independently, which to me raises some concern with regards to the letting of bonds, et cetera, as to who builds what and when do they build it, even though that's not really specifically addressed in the ballot measure. And it was also important that in that RFP, it was specifically said that you need to provide for a 50-person jail add-on at some point in the future, which has not been anything that's been disclosed. So those documents were put in just as a refresher for council and for the public, so that you could find and review those documents easily if you wanted to, because they're several years old. The Q&A that was included in there came out as a result of Q&A that was published by the Assistant City Administrator as a result of holding 2 public meetings within the last month or two, et cetera, and taking questions perhaps on a Facebook post or whatever. And so there was Q&A specifically there that was referencing the discussion on whether or not a jail would be built. And I thought that might be important to recognize relative to the discussion that's inherent in the RFP. So those are where those documents came from.
Thank you.
With regards to vetting of the amendments by bond council, I sat down with Mayor Getchman and we went through these amendments, the 3 of them that were being proposed in this version of the resolution. And I want to reiterate what Councilmember Jacoba said. Had we not brought this motion back tonight as a separate resolution, we wouldn't be here tonight. And it's important, I think, for the citizens to understand we are not trying to keep this from the public. I don't want this to go to the public. But the way it was handled at the last meeting, it was not coming back and it was not going to the public. So it was important that we do that. So I sat down with the mayor to go over the 3 changes that were primarily discussed at that meeting, even though I had other reservations of my own, and said, can we put these amendments into the language? Can we recognize the $18 million total cost? Can we recognize the specific location? And can we better characterize this as jointly held property? And the answer that I got back as a result of that discussion is that the mayor did check with bond council, and 2 of those 3 for sure were no problem, was my understanding, that there was no problem with the location addition. There was no problem with adding the jointly held property issue. And the mayor voiced a personal concern about putting the $18 million total cost into the recognition, but I don't know that legal counsel said, don't do that. It sounds like our legal counsel here said there's no problem with any of those. And so if you ask, did we get vetting? I didn't personally, but others did, and council tonight is saying that there really aren't issues in that regard. So that's really the answers that I have to your questions that were posed. I'll take other questions if you have. Otherwise, I have some other general comments I'd like to make as a council member at some point before we go.
At this point, I will say that Councilman Yerger and I did sit down. We were able to discuss 2 of the items, which one was the location, which is the general area of 29th and Lincoln Avenue. And then the other was that it's a jointly owned piece of property by the city of Fremont and Dodge County. Bond counsel did review that and did say they weren't crazy about adding anything, but at the actually, they want to be more broad or more open, and so at the end of the day, they did, however, say that there would be no heartburn with the address and the property being jointly owned. They suggested that to not put the overall cost of the project in the ballot language, but suggested similar to what the county did, is put the overall cost of 18,100,000 in the resolution, which is advertised anywhere or anytime this is advertised. The resolution states that information would be in the resolution and is stated in there. And their recommendation was not to put the address in ballot language, but it's okay to put the address in, or it would be okay to put the address in the resolution, along with the overall cost of the project, and our portion of it being 10.317, and again the joint language. So I have a copy of that that could be reviewed as well. But that was their comments in regards to the options that Councilman Yerger and I met and discussed, and we did come to grounds in regards to the address and it being on land jointly owned by the city of Fremont and Dodge County, that being added to the language on the actual ballot language. With that, we'll go to Councilmember McLean.
Yes, I would be much more comfortable reviewing something if you have an item that could be received that would be a compromise to the original language and Councilmember Yerger's language, because frankly, I'm still concerned about approving something that has not been received final review by legal. I do want to push back a little bit on the reason that we're forced to consider this Councilmember Yerger resolution is because 3 people did vote against the original suspending the rules tonight. So we could have considered the original had 3 people gone and ahead and given the supermajority. And I think there's some other issues at play perhaps, but I would ask if the mayor does have such language that it be received.
Make a motion to that effect.
Yes, I would. I make a motion to receive.
Is there a second? Councilman Coons?
I'll second that motion.
Ready? Cast your votes.
Councilmember Yerger, we don't have your vote recorded yet.
Councilman Yerger?
I'm thinking about it.
Okay, it's all right.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Councilman Langman.
My question is to legal then. Have you, sorry. My question is to legal. Have you reviewed these and would you feel comfortable with this and this wording also?
I haven't reviewed that one specifically.
They're not our bond counsel.
Has bond counsel? Did bond?
Bond counsel did review.
And they were okay with it.
Yes. And that was actually, what day did we meet, Brad? Thursday evening, they had okayed the general location and the joint section of that. Councilmember Jacobus.
I have no problem making a motion. Am I still? I think I would know better than I. So I have no problem with this resolution. I do believe the resolution number has to change. It does have the original resolution number on it. So I would make a motion to amend the document. I mean, how do we do?
Council make the example of the motion.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna
I
back
don't
up.
know what Mr. Langman feels about that.
Councilmember McLean, and then
I'll pass over to Mark Legband if you want.
then we're back to Brad.
Thank you, Mayor. I would appreciate an opportunity to speak now as a council person. One of the things that has troubled me about this, and it troubles me about bond issues in general, and that's why is the ballot language typically deceptively vague? Why shouldn't it be as transparent as possible? Making the changes that are suggested tonight to the resolution, the election notice, in the first paragraph, and in the sample ballot, more accurately describe what the voters are actually asked to be approving. And it seems to me that if you want the voters to make an intelligent decision, the information should be presented to them, especially when it's been indicated to us tonight that the three changes that were being proposed weren't something that they strongly or stringently objected to or had any specific rationale or reason. I just wouldn't do it. And typically, I understand when you're trying to pass something, it's best to be as big as possible. And that way people are underinformed and they vote accordingly based on the lack of information they have. I just personally don't feel that that's the appropriate way. And that we have a better opportunity tonight to do something better for the public, which is to give them at least a better inkling as to what they're voting for. And what are they voting for? They're voting to put in a joint law enforcement center. Yes, that's not the complete identification of what they're voting for. Is it important that they understand the total cost, not just the $10.3 million that the city's going to bond out? I think so. And the public should know that the overall cost is $18 million. And I think they need to know that when they're voting for the bonds, because once the city passes their bond issue, and once the county passes, which they have already put on the ballot, if that passes, the citizens of Fremont are going to pay on the $18 million worth of bonds, not just 10. And that's an important thing for the voters to consider. Where? Okay, well, it's going to be, and now defined to be at 29th and Lincoln. So that's good. But it doesn't specifically discuss or even mention in any of those documents that it's, as I indicated, a state or a phased in facility, or that there's a possibility of a jail. There's nothing that would indicate that the law that city and county will put the shovels in the ground at the same time. City could start and the county could start later. Just because you've passed bonds doesn't mean you have to put it in the ground right away. And so those kinds of things with those minor changes that we were making tonight, two of which are in the mayor's version as well as the one that I proposed. The only one that's any different is the disclosure of the $18 million total cost to the taxpayers, the citizens of Fremont. And that's what they'll ultimately be paying for, even though they're only approving $10.3 million worth of bonds. And I just have to ask, why would we not want to be as transparent as possible in that regard in the ballot language itself? Not everybody will be attending any meetings that we have between now and election day. when we had meetings, 13 people attended the last 2 that we had. Hopefully the public will become more engaged and get more information. But if they don't, the only way they can get the information is off the ballot resolution, the election notice form, and the ballot itself. So being as transparent as possible, and legal as said, we could be, whether they would absolutely recommend it or not, because they like more vague language. They haven't said we can't do it. I strongly feel we should do it, and we should be as transparent as possible with the public in seeking approval. I don't think there's any question that this council wants this to go before the voters. I do. I just want them to be as informed as possible. And those 3 minor changes, and they were relatively minor, to the 2021-74 amendment, and what was proposed in the 2021-76 amendment, I think is what we should approve tonight. And we haven't gotten, although I know that some have put out already to amend the language, but we haven't actually discussed or taken a vote on each of these amendments. And I think we need to do that. Thanks.
Councilmember McLean.
I think this represents a compromise. It hits 2 of the main 3 points that Councilmember Yerger has discussed. It also, within the body of the notice of election, has an entire paragraph dedicated to the total cost of the project. And I think the fact that this has been vetted by our bond council makes this a very good compromise. And I would like to see this body think about a compromise and getting this done so the voters can vote. I don't know where we're at in terms of Councilmember Lakeband originally voting or making a motion to amend. I would ask him to consider amending to the mayor's version, and I would second that if he's okay with amending his original motion to be this received version tonight, which includes the language about the land jointly owned and in the area of 29th and Lincoln Street, addressing 2 of the 3 issues in the ballot item and addressing the other issue in the notice of election.
Councilmember Ellis had wanted to talk, and then I think we need to go back to Councilmember Lightman.
So I can't stress how much I repeat what Councilman Yeager said about transparency. I think we all want what's best for our police officers. We all want what's best for our police department. But I believe we all want to be as transparent as we can. And so by discussing this last meeting, there was an attempt to compromise, and that compromise was voted down. So, that's where I believe that we as councilmen need to come in here with a compromising heart and not wanting exactly what you want. Tonight, we're sitting here looking at something very similar that we would have compromised on Tuesday had we gotten there. And we had plenty of time to let the lawyers look at it afterwards. And if there wasn't an issue, we could have always come back. So I really believe that we tried our best to compromise on Tuesday, and it was shot down, voted down. And I also just a common courtesy of hearing other council members out, listening to their issues, and then respecting one another and being able to come up with a compromise as opposed to keeping a closed mind. I think this council needs to reevaluate itself and figure out that's what our job is for, is compromise. And so also there's the rule of law. I mean, we have a code that we have to follow. And so some of the issues that we've been roughly stopped by this was the rules that are put in place before us. And we are, as council members, expected to follow those rules. And so I can't say enough about Mr. Ura's comments about transparency, about the changes. But the resolution in front of us is a compromise, and I'm for that. Thank you.
Councilmember Langman.
Yeah, I would like to go ahead and amend it to the mayor's compromise.
Which would be resolution 2020-176. Is that correct?
Correct.
Councilmember Ellis,
Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Yerger,
Would like to make an amendment to Mr. Legband's amendment with regards to section 3 of the material that was handed out by the mayor. In particular, where it says at a cost at least of 18 million won. My recollection was that this wasn't postured before as at least $18 million, $18.1 million. The county's ballot and the city's ballot, 10.3 and 7.8 million, is based exactly on $18 million. Not that we expect that it's going to be exceeding. And so I'd like to see the at least stricken from section 3. And I offer that as an amendment before we address Mr. Legband's motion.
is there a second? Councilmember Jacobus,
I would make that second.
I have a question first.
Yep.
Is legal okay with this amendment? And I'm afraid
It
there's 5 more to go. Legal okay with this?
It's the same issue as the other amendments do. It's legally okay, it's just not advisable.
We have a motion to second. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
Councilman Legband's motion has been amended. I would take a second to resolution 2020-176 as amended. Councilmember Jacobus.
I second it.
Ready?
I just want to make sure, I want to make sure we're voting on your language with the amendment that we just made, to strike a couple of words for at least. Right, this is being labeled as resolution, not 2020-174 as submitted to us here. It's being resubmitted and voted on as 2020-176.
Yes.
And right now, we're just voting on the amendment, not on the resolution yet, correct?
Voting on Mark's amendment to the agenda.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
As amended.
as amended. The amended
As amended,
amendment.
yeah.
The amended amendment or the amendment.
So you ready?
Yes.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Can't believe it.
Now I would take a motion in regards to the amendment resolution 2020-176. Councilman Yerger. You're like it. Okay. Councilmember Jacobus.
I make the motion to adopt the amended resolution 2020-176.
Councilmember McLean.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Motion's approved. Item 7, I would take a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Jacobus,
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
for a second. Councilman Lightman,
I'll second that.
cast your votes. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.
I heard the wife.